And we do have a quorum here. If I wait for the meeting to be, I have to clear that meeting as being recorded away. So you have Councilmember Lingua, Councilmember Mayers, Councilmember Faux, Councilmember Sadiq. So we have a quorum. So I'm going to start the public hearing on the 2021 Rise Zone renewal at this time, starting at 7 o'clock p.m. Are there any? Well, why don't we start? Mr. Town Manager, would you like to give us an overview of the Rise Zone renewal?
Yes, actually, we have Director Shelton here this evening, and he's prepared to give us a brief introduction.
Sounds good.
Yes, I'm going to plan on trying to get my screen share to work. One moment, please. There we go. Okay. Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. We're having this public hearing to discuss the Rise Zone reapplication. The Rise Zone was created by the state in 2014 as a means of incentivizing news technology businesses and other types of industries of that type of nature, biology and photography and things like that, to locate next to the state's resources, mainly being those the higher education, so the University of Maryland and other state institutions. In 2015, the state deemed the University of Maryland a qualified institution, meaning that they were eligible to have their own RISE zone. RISE stands for Regional Institution Strategic Enterprise Zone. And in 2016, the University of Maryland and the town and the city of College Park filed an application and were approved for the Greater College Park RISE zone. So the map here shown on the screen is the outline of this RISE zone. A portion in town is down here along River Road and Rivertech Court, including St. John's properties and the Raytheon building, College Park Academies, and so on. Yes, so the program incentivizes these businesses to locate next to our high quality state assets by incentivizing them through both property tax credits and income tax credits originally. The property tax credits were 50% for the of capital improvements for the first year, and then I believe it was 10% for years 2 through 5. And then there was another income tax credit that could be received as well, based on the number of employees over a certain salary threshold. There was a third property tax credit incentive that the Prince George's County application included, so that Prince George's County, the city of College Park, and the town of Riverdale Park would all offer, but that wasn't necessarily a requirement of the RISE Zone program. That was a 5-year 75% tax credit for businesses that were in specific industries. And there's a list in the resolution of those specific industries. They include the engineering, data analytics, virtual reality, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and so on. So it's in the resolution. I believe it's a third further result line if somebody would like to see exactly which industries those are. But there was a 5-year 75% tax credit for those types of industries moving into this RISE zone. Now, the issue with that faced the RISE zone program is that many of the businesses moving into the RISE zone, the smaller ones that they were eligible for this program, were not the ones building the properties in which they were housed. So they were often tenants. They were leasing their property. So the property tax credit was not something that would directly benefit them. For example, a property like the new Copt property at the Cybrary. So Cybrary is a tenant of the property, and but Copt is the property owner. They would be the ones responsible for paying the property taxes. And so yes, the program would not work for many of the tenants that we found moving into the RISE zone. And so in 2011, this year, in May, at the 2021 session, the Maryland passed an amendment to this program allowing for municipalities, counties, and other economic development organizations to create rental assistance programs, which would be matched by the RISE zone funds. So in order to participate in that type of rental assistance program, the town would apply to the state RISE zone program coordinator with their application of a rental assistance program. And if it is approved by the state, then the state would match funds from the RISE zone funds to help with the rental assistance program. This would help target those businesses that don't own the property themselves and wouldn't benefit from the property tax credits. Yeah, so that kind of sums up where we are right now with the RISE zone. Every 5 years, the RISE zone designation expires. So this is a renewal application. This was originally approved in 2016. Yes, the state is hoping that the state and the county are hoping that with the addition of this rental assistance component and matching funds from the RISE zone program fund, they're going to have more businesses participate in the program. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know this is a pretty detailed program.
Thank you, Mr. Chelton. Director Chelton. Are there questions for Director Chelton? In particular, any questions from the public? This is a public hearing. Ms. Katz?
Yes, I don't see another way to raise my hand other than with the video. I don't know if that was intentional for this meeting. But my question just is about, can you help me understand what the benefit is to the town for renewing this for another 5 years? And I ask because I just recall back in 2016 that on the program basically just kind of reduces the amount of property tax that the town can get for this intended business area that we want to grow. And so by renewing this for another 5 years, I'm just wanting to understand better, is this really something that's always going to be for the town? Is there a longer term view for how this benefits the town?
Yes, so I'll say that the RISE zone, as it stands, has had a very low participation rate. I know specifically for the Greater College Park RISE zone, there have been no businesses that have been able to participate in the property tax credit program so far because of the problems that I mentioned before, that the businesses that would be eligible to benefit from the program were not the property owners themselves. And so by amending the program to include rental assistance, we will be able to help incentivize businesses that generally have high paying positions to move into town and to be able to attract more businesses of that nature, which would help, which would help provide residents with access to more high-paying jobs. That's the intent behind the program.
And if I may add, we're also concerned about our accessible base with remote work becoming more and more of the norm. We're looking at office space, and it's the commercial and office sectors of our accessible base that help pay for services throughout the town. And we need to make sure that as buildings are built, they're able to have tenants occupy those spaces. So I think as businesses look for smaller footprints, we may have to assist either through the RISE zone as originally envisioned, or through a rental program. So I think shoring up the commercial sector of our accessible base is important to the future of the town.
So can I dive in with just a procedural issue? Ms. Katz mentioned that she didn't know where the hand raising was. It's actually hiding under the reactions button at the bottom of the screen. So you can clap or put your thumb up or show a heart or laugh or all those sorts of things. There's also a raise hand option down there. And just as a follow-on question to Ms. Katz's question, Director Chilton, you mentioned there'd been a low participation rate. Have we actually lost any revenue as a result of the program over the last 5 years?
No, we have not. No, I know for certain that that nobody has participated in the property tax credit portion of the RISE zone in Greater College Park. Or yeah, in this the Greater College Park RISE zone is what it's called. Yeah, and that would include the town portion. Yes.
And Ms. Katz, just well, I'm not sure exactly how the rental program works. We're gonna have to figure that out.
Yes, so it's the rental program, I guess, would be in part what we envision, and then I guess we would ask for support from the state, who would offer matching amounts from the RISE zone fund. That's my understanding. So they, I imagine they'll have some. Go ahead.
So we would have to put money into the budget in order to create such a program, and then the state would be presumably match the same amount of money that we put into to this.
Yes, that is right.
And the RISE zone fund that you mentioned is funded out of the increased property tax values, or where does that come from?
The state has set aside a certain amount of funds. I can't remember the precise amount right now, but they have set aside funds for this program. And so the funds that would otherwise have been intended for to recuperate their property tax revenue loss, instead of the funds being allocated there, they would be allocated directly towards the rental assistance matching funds.
Okay, so we would expect to, as we have or are about to, we had a major real estate development in this zone, and because it's owned by the university and rented, then we didn't give up any and will not give up any revenue from that. And so we would be receiving that revenue and take a fraction of that and put it into the rental assistance program. Just speaking conceivably, that we could do it that way. I mean, I know we'll just be budgeting from general revenues, but is that a reasonable way to think of it, Mr. Town Manager? Is that?
I think so, sir. And then the open question would be if this is just for new businesses or existing businesses. And then the question would be whether or not any of the American Rescue Plan funds could be used to assist existing businesses with rental assistance. So there may be another funding source as well, but I think we as staff need to run that into a corner.
Okay. Are there any additional public comments, having discussed this a little bit more than I thought we were going to? Okay, well, let's give it, I would say let's give it a few more minutes, and just in case anyone has any more questions. Ms. Katz?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I thought one of the buildings was set up not just for office space, but for fabrication or production. I'm just wondering strategically, I'm once again, I'm thinking longer term, especially if we, attract businesses in. I know we don't have necessarily, it's not about us determining what kind of businesses are going to come in, but just with the point that the town manager made about office space, I just thought that one of the buildings was really focused on bringing in production or fabrication, like actually where the ERCO used to be.
Yes, and just to clarify, it would be whatever the rise zone, the industries that are targeted in the rise zone. I refer to that as the office sector. Think not non-retail commercial space.
Of course, the university is, building other buildings on the campus too to promote that kind of thing. I guess I'm not an expert at what they're building and all that, but it just seems like there's a brand new building has gone up with the for the computer department, and then another building that's going up right now, right there by the entrance along the front of the campus on Route 1. Not sure what that building is for, but they're definitely promoting a lot of development, research, that kind of thing.
That's the new policy department.
Ah, cool. Okay. And what does that mean? what kind of policy?
School of Public Policy.
School of public policy. Okay, so policy, not necessarily research or development in that building. Is that what you're meaning?
Well, arguably we researched what the best policies are for various disciplines, but
Understand. Okay. And once again, I just want to mention, thinking long term for the town as we see this. It's a unique sector, I think, in our town. It's the only kind of town, it's non-retail. And just down the road at some point, are we seeing that the Rise Zone we wouldn't be supporting that, or we wouldn't be wanting to renew that? Or is this just something that's looking like it's going to be established as that's what that zone will be in perpetuity?
Well, I know that this program expires every 5 years, so I think after each 5 years, we'd be able to reevaluate to see how much of a need we have for incentivizing businesses to move into this area. I think I'd love to see the day when we no longer have to worry about the businesses being incentivized to move in, that they're just plentiful in the area, and everything is built as it is meant to be. But yes, there will certainly be times to reevaluate it regularly.
Councilmember Lingua?
Mr. Charlton just essentially gave an answer I was going to give. It's really about looking about what happens over the course of the time period, the 5-year period, to make that assessment. And just as there's really hasn't been that much demand in this first 5-year period, what these amendments to the plan could do, let alone what could be happening economically over in the next 5 years, we may be seeing a very different picture in 2026. So.
And as I understand it, this program does need to be renewed by the state also. So they may decide that it's not an effective program. So I did want to touch on one item, which are the target industries of this program, and they include engineering, data analytics, earth sciences, virtual reality, cybersecurity, quantum computing, linguistics, additive manufacturing, e-commerce, robotics, aerospace, biotechnology, and similar industries. So we could expect that there might be some, from a lot of those anyway, personal property tax coming in from expensive items that they have. So that's just something to keep in mind.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, before you close the public hearing, as noted, I believe in the memo, we're asking that the record be kept open for written comment until December 6th.
Very good. Okay, are there additional public comments, or is it time to close the hearing? Seeing no hands, I will close the hearing at 7:20 p.m. And now we move into work session. Work session is an informal meeting. We are technically still bound by Robert's Rules of Order, but we tend to be a little bit easier with how we discuss things. We have quite a long agenda before us. And first, I guess we'll start by saying, are there any amendments, any changes needed to the agenda? Just as a warning, I will be bringing up an item under unfinished business, which is committee assignments. So I guess I should also ask, do any council members have any conflicts of interest for any agenda item? Councilmember Lingua?
Not so much a matter of conflict of interest, but an item on unfinished business I'll be bringing up regarding Greater Riverdale Cares and Route 1 Cares.
Very good. Okay, well, given that everyone's happy with the agenda, let's move on to the presentation, the introduction to budget format.
We have Deputy Director Jones of Finance handling that this evening. Mr. Jones?
Sure. If I could share my screen. Okay. So good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's presentation will provide an overview of how the budget is formatted and the various components of the budget. So with the addition of new council members, we like this opportunity to familiarize the council and members of the public with the way that we have formatted our budget. Additionally, we'd like to take this time to offer some transparency as well as fiscal responsibility. These are some of the town's top priorities, and by presenting this budget and the components that go into it, we hope to continue that transparency there. So to begin, this is the budget. This can be accessed on the website. This is the cover page, and it begins with the table of contents, which is interactive. So if you are viewing the budget, you're able to click on a page number or a line item, and that will take you to various parts of the budget, various sections. So to begin, we have section 1, which gives a background of the town with different information that we found is important. Begins with the Distinguished Budget Award. We were again recently awarded the Distinguished Budget Award, which comes from the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association. With that award, we are given a rubric as well with ways that we were very proficient and things that we can improve upon. So in receiving that award, we have met all of the requirements, and we take the things from that award that we've done really well with, and we continue to include those, and the things that we can show some improvement with, we include that with each budget. So each year we do expect to win the Distinguished Budget Award from the GFOA. So that's the first section. And as you can see, if you click this, it will take you to various components of the budget. The second section is the fund balances and debt services. This first page right here is the fund balance page. Here you will find the various funds for the town. So you have the general fund, OPEB, community development, economic development, health and wellness, special revenue fund for TIF, the debt service fund, and the capital improvement projects. So the first portion of this page, it shows the activity from the previous fiscal year in a finalized format. So it'll show you the inflows and the outflows of the various funds. The second part of the fund balance sheet shows projections for the current fiscal year. So for example, we have a transfer here, general fund, 387,000 is moved to the debt service reserve fund. And then you have additional revenue here from Prince George's TIF real property taxes. And then you have an outflow here that shows the debt service payments. And then the last line item would show the projected fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. The next page is the debt service sheet. This sheet shows the long-term debt that the town holds. It shows the debt payments for those loans. It also shows the incremental tax financing and the payments made there. So if you look at the bottom here, we have some of the long-term debt, CDA 30-year, 15-year, and then there's a PNC. And then you have, here you have the debt payments when they're scheduled to be paid. So we have 2 PNC payments, 2 15-year loan payments, 2 30-year loan payments. And then it shows the general property tax revenue, the TIF revenues available for the town for debt service payments, and then TIF revenue dedicated to the Calvert track. So yeah, that is section 3. So section 4, I'm sorry, that was section 2. Section 3 is projections and summaries. So here you'll find the 5-year projections. So here we have a sheet that shows the approved budget and then projected budgets as far as where the revenues are going to be, where the expenditures are going to be over the course of the next 5 years, just to give some insight into where the town, where we think the town will be as far as revenues and expenditures are concerned. Another component of this section is the revenue and expenditure budget overview. So this section we have different ways that we show how the revenue and expenditures are broken down. So the first just gives an overview of all of the revenue and all of the expenditures, and it shows we have a balanced budget. And then as you travel through this section, you'll see that we have more detailed version of the revenues where you'll see how they are broken down. So for instance, local taxes, 6,602,000. If you go to the next page, it gives you a breakdown of that 6,602,000 for the approved budget. And then it shows actual revenue from the fiscal year 2019, actual revenue from FY 2020, and it allows you to compare from different fiscal years, but it breaks the revenue down into more detailed categories. And this carries down up to page 39. So another way that we've shown our revenue expenditures is expenses by cost center. So this allows you to go to have a summary page of each of the various cost centers that we have. So we have the mayor and council, and it shows a breakdown of the salaries, benefits, overtime, contractual services, and operating expenses. And again, allows you to compare it to the previous fiscal years, and it shows the approved budget. And then you can find that for each of the cost centers that we have. For instance, mayor and council here, admin services, finance services, employee services, and you'll find a summary for each of the various cost centers that we have. And then we actually have a third way that we've broken down the expenditures is you can view it by the major category, and you can compare each of the various cost centers, but by the salaries and wages, and you can see how it's broken down, the benefits and overtime. And yes, it shows the various expenses by cost center, but it's broken down by the actual expenditure category. So sections 4 through 18 actually go into more detail, and they show each of the various cost centers. The example that I would use is going to be admin services. So I'll go back to the table of contents, and I will click on section 5, and this will take us to admin services. So section 5, admin services. This is an example of one of the cost centers that we have, and it goes into detail for all of the expenditures associated with this cost center. So to begin, each cost center provides a mission statement, accomplishments for the previous year, and then objectives and goals for the current fiscal year. And those can be found on the first page in the cost center. The next has a list of different KPIs and workload measurements. So for this particular cost center, building permits, business licenses, and rental licenses are some of the KPIs that are used. The next page shows an overview of the budget. And it shows a staff headcount, so you can see how many employees are in a specific cost center. We have various graphs to show the expenditures, and you can kind of get a brief overview of where the majority of the expenditures are. We have a breakdown, a pie chart, total expenditures by year, and then there are a list of significant changes for each cost center listed here. And then you'll have even more detail if you really want to get in to see exactly where the money is allocated for each of the cost centers. You'll find salaries and wages, employee benefits, and overtime premiums on one page. And then as you move forward, you'll find a page that has the contractual services for each cost center. For this cost center, legal services, information technology services, and 5G small cell tower permits can be found for this cost center. And then it moves to operating expenses, and it goes into detail for all of the various expenditures, for instance, dues and subscriptions, training and education, travel expenses, and so forth. So the last section that I'm going to cover is the capital improvements. So yeah, if you make your way back to the table of contents, you can go to section 17. No, I'm sorry, it's 19. Yeah, 19, capital improvement. And here you'll find a list of all of the projects that we have, as well as a background with a description of the CIP. You'll find the revenue and expenditures. And if we click on that, it'll take you to a summary of the CIP. Then you'll have a list of all of the revenues, various revenues that are going to be used for the CIP. So you have a breakdown of the CDA 15-year loan, the expenditures that will be used from that loan, CDA 30-year loan. You have a list of the projects that will be using CDA loan money, as well as CIP revenue. You'll have a beginning balance that shows restricted use and unrestricted use. The next page shows the expenditures broken down by each project. Our projects are broken down by different categories. So you'll have community projects, and here are all of the projects that are associated with the community projects, building renovations, and this will show you all of the projects that can be found there. And yeah, it just gives you a total of all of the expenditures broken down by restricted and unrestricted, and then it gives you a total. And then as you move forward, you'll find each one of the projects listed here with specific information about the department, the point of contact, the priority level, the type of project, the useful life, the category, location, and then the year submitted. And then you'll find a description for each project, justification for the project, and then the budget impact. And you'll find the funding source for each of the projects, and then the expenditures. And each project has its own specific page with information, and all of this can be accessed in the budget on the website. Yeah, and you can use the interactive table of contents to access anything that you might need to find. And yeah, that concludes the budget presentation on the composition of the budget. And at this point, I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Councilmember Siddiq, you have a question?
Where exactly is this in the website?
Let me see. So I have it bookmarked. So on the budget, government, departments, finances, and budgets. That's where it can be found. So I guess if we go to the Riverdale Park on the home page, I have it favorited. How do I get there from here?
I'm sorry, Gentry, I just stepped back. What is it that you're looking for?
How to access the budget. I favorited it.
Oh,
so
So,
I'm not.
yeah,
yeah.
so from the home page, if you go to
Mhm.
government,
Okay.
and so at the top, government, and then departments are in the right-hand column of the dropdown, and you go to finance services. So come down, come over, finance services, and then that takes you to the finance. And then on the left-hand side, you have budgets, and click on there, and then you'll have fiscal 2022 approved and proposed. And then the previous year budgets are there as well.
Thank you for your assistance, John.
No problem. I don't have a bookmark, so I navigate through.
Are there additional questions from council or the public for Deputy Director Jones? Okay, thank you, Deputy Director. Councilmember Lingua, yes.
Just brief comment to congratulate staff on receiving the budget award again this year.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the presentation. We will move on to my report. I'm going to save most of my report for 2 weeks from now, but I will just mention that we will be celebrating, observing Thanksgiving in just a few days. And I wanted to express my personal thanks. I'm thankful that I am able to serve as mayor for the town of Riverdale Park and to provide my skills to that. I'm thankful for my day job that helps me pay the bills. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for my health. I am thankful for the very devoted, hardworking town staff who we have, and that includes the council members. And I am thankful also for the residents of town that make this a great place to live, and the businesses who operate here that also make this a great place to live. So that will conclude my mayor's report for this evening. Thank you. Mr. Town Manager.
Yes, I have a list of things to mention this evening. First, Town Hall and DPW, Department of Public Works Operations, will be closed on Thursday and Friday in observance of the holiday. And if I started talking about things that I am thankful for, sir, the meeting would stretch on. But suffice it to say, I'm thankful for the town of Riverdale Park and its residents and the leadership of the elected body and the wonderful people that I have the honor of working with. Trash will not be collected on Thursday, so we're jumping into some operational things. Due to Thanksgiving, and trash service will resume on Monday. Let's remember that Saturday is Small Business Saturday, and please shop small and shop local and support our local businesses. The Municipal Center project, the Department of Public Works, the new entryways going into the building, that work will start on the 29th. And the 48th Avenue sidewalk project will also start on the 29th. We appreciate the mayor and council support for those projects. There's the scheduled roadway repair projects. We're expecting to have that schedule in our hands on the 29th as well. So the week ending the 29th. So sometime during that week, we'll have a schedule from the contractor. The county is making progress in its review of the Longfellow Street Stormwater Project, and residents will receive the easement documents this week. So it's a short week, but I understand that's going to happen this week. We did install 14 new pet waste stations throughout the town, and we'll be putting together a map in the near future on those. Luminous will hold a vaccination clinic at the farmers market on December 2nd from 3 until 6:30. The toy drive. Every year, the town works with the elementary school to deliver toys to children for the holiday. This year, the need is greater than we have ever seen. We've received word that 160 families, approximately 400 children, have signed up this year. And we've never had numbers like that. We will be doing what we can in terms of repositioning, and we're going to work, as I understand it, much more closely with the county's broader Toy for Tots program, because we simply don't have the capacity within the town to meet this need. We do have Captain Turner here this evening. If there's any questions on that, Captain Turner will be able to respond along with Director Barnes. And with that, I have no further comments for this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. When is there's a call for contributions of toys to that program, and what's the deadline for getting those in?
Yes, so Ms. Barnes, can you address that aspect?
Certainly. The deadline to donate toys is December the 10th. Toys may be dropped off or mailed to the police department or town hall, which is open on Wednesdays. So those are a couple of options. I know some folks used Amazon last year and sent them directly to the PD, and that works just as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Councilmember Siddiq, you have a question?
You're muted, sir.
I've already had a resident say, notice the pet waste stations, and thank you all for putting it up.
Thanks, we appreciate the good feedback.
Councilmember Lingua?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lestitian, with the sidewalk work beginning on 48th Avenue on next Monday. Are notices going out to the residents along that area so that they're aware of what's going on?
I believe so. Ms. Lewis, Director Lewis, can you expand on that?
Sure. Actually, notices went out about a month ago that the project was coming within the next 30 to 40 days, so residents are aware. And we've had direct contact from several residents from whom we needed a right of entry agreement. So the community is eagerly awaiting the project to both start and be completed. And it's estimated to be completed within 3 weeks.
You just answered my follow-up question. Thank you very much. I am going to have my
Okay.
fingers crossed. I'm going to pray. I'm going to break out my good luck incense, whatever it needs to be,
We
so that we
appreciate it.
meet that 3-week period, because with Christmas right around the corner, I'm sure folks would like to see that done by then.
We certainly heard that. Absolutely.
I hope so, and I wish the crews luck. And I think hopefully we can all hope for stable weather so it can
Yes.
get done.
Weather is very important for that.
Yeah.
Are there additional questions for town manager? Okay, let's dive into the council, committee, and ward reports. I believe Councilmember Smith, are you feeling up to a report this evening, or?
Yeah, briefly, sorry. As you can tell, I am feeling a bit under the weather, but hopped on to ensure I saw the budget presentation at the reminder of Mayor Thompson, which was very informative, and I'm glad to see that. And also offer my congrats to the staff and the town manager for the budget award. Appreciate that. I am thankful right now that I took a COVID test like 40 minutes ago and it was negative. So that's great. Made it this far without managing to catch it. So happy about that. Also, if you haven't, now is a great time to pull out your turkey out of the freezer if you have it frozen, to make sure it's thawed in time to cook. And for those of us who get our turkeys every year from the farmer's market, just a reminder that there'll be a special market tomorrow where you can pick up your turkeys if you are like me and panicked when you forgot to go to the farmer's market on Thursday and had to call the vendor to make sure that you could get it later. You're good to go. You can pick it up on tomorrow. So, and if you haven't gotten one of those free range turkeys for Thanksgiving in previous years, I highly recommend going for it in future years. As mentioned, I'm not feeling well, so I'm going to pop off after this report to take some NyQuil. But I do want to give my enthusiastic support for the recommendations of the Riverdale Park Station traffic calming report. I don't want to leave this meeting with that on the agenda without indicating that, and I hope my fellow council members will also support this important project for the safety of Ward 1. And then lastly, I would just be remiss if I did not mention that this coming up weekend is the 86th iteration of the Iron Bowl. I hope everyone will be watching and rooting for Alabama and not the West Alabama Lee County Barnes School. It should be a fun game. I'll be watching, hopefully, if I'm feeling up to it. Roll Tide. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Hopefully, we can all just leave the football recommendations sitting there. Councilmember Foe, do you have a report this evening?
I'll reserve a majority of my comments for our legislative in a couple of weeks. I like my family usually, and we didn't this past weekend, and it's shocking. We didn't go around the table and say what we're thankful for. It's always been a family history that I've loved. Having my firstborn child this year, I just want to say that I am remarkably and gratefully thankful to my wife, Mara, for every sacrifice that she's made on behalf of us. I can't even begin to imagine what my life would be without her. And I don't even want to, because it's been such an incredible experience. So I'm just remarkably fortunate to have her in my life. And then so is our son, Levon. She's just been the best. I'm thankful for everything that I have in my life. I'm thankful for this town staff that works so diligently and hard for our community. I'm thankful for this mayor who puts his best foot forward on every single day and challenges me consistently to be a better council member. And you know what, after the last couple of years, I think everybody should just be thankful for what it is that we have, and hopefully you get to spend time with your loved ones. We didn't get to do this last year, and it's just living life day by day is so important to recognize what it is we have, because nothing is promised or guaranteed. And I'm so grateful for every one of you and everything that I have in my life. So I hope everybody has a great evening, and I'm just gonna be done there.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Lingua?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Being that we're on the topic of being thankful for what things we are thankful for, I think the list that you've come up with and the list that town managers come up with so far, and my colleague from Ward 2 has come up with, and whatever other members were to come up with, I would wholeheartedly concur. It's a very fortunate time to be where this is at, and you know, were I to reach into the College of Musical Knowledge, I would quote, "Right here, right now, there is no place I'd rather be." It is an honor. It is a pleasure. It's a great opportunity. It's all of the above and more. And I appreciate everybody for the efforts that they make, and for all that we're able to work towards in the future. Having said that, I received the other day a request or an email from former mayor of University Park, John Tabori, regarding finding out more about where the town of Riverdale Park is looking towards in its budget in funding efforts made by Greater Riverdale Cares and Route 1 Communities Care programs to help with food insecurity in this area, as well as, and in doing so, helping out local businesses local restaurants at the same time. We brought up more under, excuse me, under unfinished business, as this is a continuing program that we have donated to before. And at that time, I hope that upon talking about this, we can come to a consensus or some other determination so that we can move forward on this. This evening, I had a chance to stop in briefly to the District 3 event over at the Hall in College Park, and was able to hear County Executive Alsobrooke speak. And she spoke of how far the county has come during these past 19 months in regards to the pandemic, in the sense that now that we have the second lowest, I believe she said it was the second lowest case rate in the state, which, considering where the county started at the beginning of this, is quite an impressive feat. And I would say that on top of the list of things to be thankful for, I'm thankful of the efforts that she and the county has made in that effort to help combat this pandemic over this time period. She also brought up a number of things that she would like to see the county move forward on. One of them being, as many county executives have in the past, is trying to do is raising the tax base, the commercial tax base. Again, quoting a statistic that I remember hearing under County Executive Baker, and that 70% of tax revenues are coming from personal property and the residents, and 30% is coming from commercial businesses. It is a big challenge ahead of her, the county, municipalities to do. I think it's something that we can all contribute in terms of giving input on how things could be improved or re-examined to see how they could work better towards getting to a greater revenue stream from commercial businesses and commercial properties. I know many of us have had experiences, be it resident or business, coming in new to the county, or just looking to relocate within the county in terms of what needs to be done. I know I've seen, excuse me, a number of trials and tribulations with efforts that CCAR CDC has been making towards this end, and trying to work with all that the county needs to do. And I hope that we can all draw from this and bring this to light to the county executive office in hopes that they can work with county council and make these improvements. Lastly, I hope everyone has safe travels to and from wherever they are going for Thanksgiving. You'll get there and you'll get home when you do, and hopefully it's in a way that while it may be a little bit longer than than you thought it would take, that you do so safely. And with that, I will conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. And regarding the COVID case rate, I didn't touch on that in my report, but we're actually at this point today below Montgomery County, which is also a bit of a surprise to me, although we are around 5 times the case rate that we had back in late June. So we're still not out of this pandemic yet. With that, Councilmember Sadiq, do you have a report this evening?
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Mejia, I don't believe is present. I have not heard from her. Councilmember Mayers, do you have a report this evening?
Good evening, Mayor Council. I have nothing to report at this time. However, I would like to ask that the crosswalk between 54th and Jefferson really needs repainting. All the white pedestrian cross lines are gone.
Mr. Mayor, if I may interject.
Please.
That project is included among the 12 road improvement projects that are scheduled to start within the next couple of weeks. And I expect that that'll happen pretty early in the schedule. If not, I'll follow up and give you the actual date when the contractor expects to do that work.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our reports for this evening. Next item on the agenda are public comments. Are there any public comments? And members of the public will have an opportunity to comment on all of the discussion items. So please hold any comments for those items. Okay, doesn't look like we have any public comments. So let's move into the discussion items. Item number 1, fiscal year 2022 revenue update.
Deputy Director Jones.
Thank you, John. So tonight's revenue comparison is much like the previous revenue reports. The format is the current fiscal year and then the 3 fiscal years that preceded, with 5 major revenue categories. The first being local taxes. Here we have the real estate taxes, personal property taxes, local income taxes, and operating. So to start, real estate taxes, if you see, is at $4,623,905, which is significantly higher than the 3 previous fiscal years. The reason for this, at this point last year, we had actually transferred some of the TIF revenue from this line item, and it was roughly $590,000 last year, and we are waiting from MuniCap to find out the exact total that should be transferred. So that number will come down and it will be reflected in the next finance reports 2 weeks from now. So that explains why that figure is higher. For the next line item, 4008, personal property tax, the town is currently at $438,833. It is lower than the previous fiscal year. Last year, the purple line made up $286,000, so that explains the difference there. As far as what is budgeted, the town is actually already at 113% of what was projected, so we are outperforming the 4008 personal property tax line item, although it does appear to be lower. For local income taxes, let's see. Oh, the town is at $149,709. The previous fiscal year, we were at 184. The one before that, 134. So that's about where we expect to be. The end of November is typically the last day of November is typically when the town receives a large chunk of local income tax revenue. So we expect to see that in the next finance reports. For operating tax, the town is at $216,027. So where are we at? Yeah, so we are in a good place there. In the previous fiscal years, we have booked operating taxes. Particularly in 2020, we didn't book any of it until January, so that's why it's so low in fiscal year 2020. In 2021, additional revenues were booked thereafter as well. So that is the local taxes, a total of $5,428,457. Again, that number will be updated. It will be reduced due to the TIF revenue being removed there. The next line, major category, are the licenses and permits. The total is $172,455. This category includes the family rentals, both multi and single, building permits, business licenses, parking permits, alarm registrations, and reductions. So currently at the 172,000 figure. The last fiscal year we were at 182,000. The year before that, 166. So we are in line with where we have been in the past. The next major category is the administrative fees, a total of $1,400. Previous year, 800, the year before that, 500, and $2,055 in FY 2019. The next major category is fines and forfeitures. This includes police reports, vehicle impounds, and parking citations. So currently at $13,525, a bit lower than we have been in the past. Previous year, 19,000, year before that, 21,000, the year before that, 27. So we are a bit lower there, not as many impounds, not as many parking citations. Now, as far as the safe speed for students, which is part of the community safety programs, we are actually much higher than where we have been in the past, with the additional speed camera, as well as less cars on the road, more speeding tickets being issued. The town currently sits at 486,806. The year before that, which was fairly high, was 305,372. The year before that was just 111. And the year before that, a bit higher at 244,000. So overall, net operating income at this point, $6,102,663. Up a bit from the previous fiscal years, but again, we do anticipate a large portion of that being reduced due to TIF revenues. Last year, it was roughly 590,000. So we expect somewhere around that ballpark figure, a reduction there, and that will be reflected in the next finance report. So yes, that concludes the revenue comparison from July to November 19th, 2021.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there any questions for the Deputy Director about the revenue update?
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
The number of parking permits was unusually high for this particular year, but it's still a lot lower than I would have expected. Maybe you know the answer, or anyone else knows the answer. Just how much are parking permits? Like each one is this indicative of just sort of a handful given out every year?
Yes. Regarding the parking permits, I can look into that and follow up with you and give you an answer on that.
Thank you.
No problem.
The parking permit program is just intended to pay for expenses and not to be a real revenue item. So it's pretty low cost per household. Any additional questions on the revenue update? Okay, let's move on to item 2, CIP budget amendment regarding CIP project number 11 PW07, streets and sidewalk improvement.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, so here we have ordinance 2021-10. So let me see, where's the ordinance? Okay, so for this current ordinance, it's an amendment of the FY 2022 budget for the purpose of amending the adopted operating and capital improvement budget for the town of Riverdale Park for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022 to increase expenditures in the town's capital improvement fund and generally related to the amendment of the town's FY 2022 operating and capital improvement budget.
And just for context, this was discussed at the November 1st meeting that the estimated expenditures for these projects came in higher than anticipated. And so we are taking additional money that's already in in the bank, more or less, and spending it on these projects in order to move them forward. Mr. Town Manager, did you wish to add anything to that?
No, I think that captures it quite accurately, sir.
Thank you. So I hope that someone on the council is ready to introduce this. Is there any additional discussion about this ordinance? Questions or comments? Councilmember Lingua?
Mr. Mayor, I'm looking forward to introducing this next week. So that alleviates any concern you might have.
I appreciate knowing that. I always hope that someone's ready to introduce it, but I thought I'd just ask. Are there additional questions or comments about this budget amendment? Okay, seeing no hands, hearing nobody talk, let's move on to item 3, the walk, bike, drive, Riverdale Park Station traffic calming discussion item.
Yes, Director Lewis, can you lead us through this, please?
I can, and thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I'm actually going to give a brief presentation on the findings and recommendations of the traffic calming report for the Riverdale Park Station and the staff's recommendations for how to proceed. The Riverdale Park Station Homeowners Association requested speed humps on Woodbury, Van Buren, and Rhode Island. And in response, the staff deployed the radar signs on Woodbury, Rhode Island, and 47th to collect traffic volumes and speeds over a 2-week period. Additionally, we authorized one of the on-call engineers to prepare the traffic calming report to determine whether the speed hump recommendations would be met at each location and whether there were other traffic calming measures that would address resident concerns about pedestrian, bike, and motorist safety in the community. The report analyzed the traffic data collected from the radar signs. I should note that the data obviously provided only a snapshot of traffic volumes and speeds over this time, which occurred during a high point in the pandemic and construction of the apartment building when West Van Buren was closed and traffic was certainly impacted as well on eastbound Van Buren. The report evaluated the existing street grid, traffic control devices that are already in place, and areas lacking effective traffic calming measures. There were 4 key findings. 1, that each location met the 8 criteria for the installation of a speed hump that's established in the town's speed hump policy. 2, speeding was not a consistent issue. The number of violations captured during the 7-day, 24-hour period on each roadway range from 1 to 8%. 3, narrow streets and curbside parking serve as traffic calming measures as intended, and additional stop signs are needed, and several existing stop signs are actually not benefiting the community. The report recommended the installation of additional stop signs, primarily on Woodbury, Van Buren, and Rhode Island Avenue, creating on several of them always stops, removing the stop signs that are not serving the community that could potentially create hazards by blocking pedestrian or traffic flow or trapping, or specifically trapping traffic between the 2 sections of Van Buren. Installing high visibility ladder style crosswalks on several key stops, a stop ahead sign, actually a stop ahead pavement marking on the bridge on the westbound approach, and retaining the existing speed humps at the trail crossings. Continuing to monitor traffic volumes and conditions as new development occurs or at other times when new data might be warranted. And to install speed humps on Woodbury, Rhode Island, and 47th only after the other recommendations are implemented, as they are likely to be more cost effective and effective in their own right in calming traffic. The staff supports the recommendation report, and we'll work with the developer and look for funding in the current budget to implement some of the recommendations in the current fiscal year. We'll also plan to recommend funding in the FY 2023 budget to cover the cost of the other recommendations in the report. And with that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Are there questions for Director Lewis from members? Let's start with the council first. I'll come back to public members. I guess that the council member from Ward 1 has left since he's ill this evening. Are there any council members who wish to go before I call on Wendy's iPad?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please, council member.
Yeah, I'm looking at these numbers here on the from the audits on the cameras, and I remember a number of years ago we had a similar audit, actually done twice on Longfellow, and we saw higher average speeds there. We saw higher number of violators there, comparable, if not greater numbers there as well. And the report back was that it wasn't reaching the criteria for speed humps on Longfellow. And while, we have a recommendation here to install speed humps, I know a lot of residents over on Longfellow, after seeing this report and seeing what the recommendation is, are going to be coming back and looking for speed humps on Longfellow. So
We do have I'm sorry.
I'm just putting that out there now because I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen.
And if I may respond, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Council member, we will pull the information from several years ago, and I will work with Director Lewis, and we can bring that back to talk to the council once we have that information in front of us.
Okay.
And we can also work and pull information from the solar powered speed limit sign that we have on Longfellow, and we'll be able to pull that data and take a look at what it is now. But those are two things that we'll work on over the next number of weeks, and we'll report back to the council. Director Lewis, did you have anything to add to that?
Actually, I was going to say the same thing, that we could look at more current volume and speed data from these cameras. In fact, we could look at it over time. I think it's been up at least a year, if not more. So we have a lot of data there to look at, as well as to compare to the data that was generated some time ago.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, council's had a chance, so let's go to Wendy's iPad.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, not really sure how to do this. In regards to what I just heard about the review of the Woodbury Van Buren, 3 quick notes. As far as the radar speed trap, not the trap, but the sign that was put up, it's human nature when you're driving and you see one of these to automatically slow down. So that really brought the numbers down. I mean, we all saw that because I live on Woodbury. The minute you see one of those, you know that you're being seen by that machine. So of course you're going to slow down. So those numbers really don't indicate the amount of speed that does happen on that street. As far as the narrow roads and the curvatures to deter, Quite the opposite. In fact, one of our residents who live on Woodbury got sideswiped. So the curvatures and the narrow roads mean nothing to these speeders. For them, it's just a challenge. The stop signs, the one by the bike path on Woodbury is not really being recognized by, I would say, at least 40 to 50%, because I can see it right outside my window. And this includes drivers of trucks, cars, and yes, even the police, who slide right through that stop sign consistently. There has been no stops by many, many vehicles at that particular crossroads. And we're just waiting for an accident to happen right there with the bikers, the moms with their strollers, the people walking. Woodbury is just a speed trap for a challenge to these young people. We hear them late at night roaring the engines and speeding down, and it's very concerning to all of us who live here. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. I think we are all, I agree with your point about the signs and changing behavior as it happens. And I'm interested to hear is Director Lewis, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we've certainly hear that, and if you're out and about in those areas, you witness that. We actually recommended before we had the engineer do the study that we install a sign permanently, so that if in fact it changes behavior, we'd see a change in behavior. I know that there are different opinions in the community, and we can sort of loop back and have a conversation about that. There are other means of collecting traffic and speed data, crossroad lines that do it. They're more expensive than the radar signs. But what the report recommends is a comprehensive approach to address the concerns of the residents in that community. So it won't be one thing that changes behavior, but multiple things that seek to change behavior, and we'll have to monitor it over time.
Okay, and I will, I'll be happy to add that there is a speed hump that is perhaps only 100 feet, 150 feet from my house. I have a stop sign in front of my house, and people will slow down to go over the speed hump and then blow through the stop sign sometimes. So it's not that that you can stop all of the bad behavior simply by installing speed humps or anything else for that matter. TC, would you like to speak?
Thanks for listening to us tonight. Appreciate getting the chance to talk. So just a couple points on the speed humps that I wanted to address. So the first thing is when they were measuring the speeds, they were actually building the apartment building at that time. So there was a lane that was closed about half of the time that they were measuring the speeds. They had trucks in the road because they were doing the construction. So it was actually a 1-lane road while they were measuring the speeds for a great portion of the time. So that actually significantly dropped the speeds. Just the fact that if you see a truck in the road and there's a one-way street, even though the traffic's going 2 directions, people are going to slow down because you don't want to run to the car going the other direction. So yeah, I definitely think that, measuring the speeds while they were building the apartment building, but even so, we still saw some examples of excessive speed. So, but I think those speeds were a lot lower than they are normally. The other thing I wanted to point out was, you talked about the curvature of the roads. There is no curvature on the roads on Woodbury. Woodbury is a straightaway. And if you measure it on Google Maps from the playground up to Route 1, it's 400 yards, 1,200 feet or 400 yards. So 4 football fields of straightaway, and it's a complete and total straightaway. So that's why these cars coming down from the playground, coming all the way up to past the FedEx to Route 1 can get going so fast, because it's 400 yards, 4 football fields of just straightaway, and people just gun it, and they get going 40 miles per hour on this road. It's not like the middle of some of these other streets where there's little turns and all this other stuff, and if they disregard the stop signs, we have some ridiculous examples of people speeding down this road, and it's because there's 4 football fields of road. So the measurements weren't correct, and this is a big straightaway. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was the last point that I'll make, because I know lots of other people want to talk, is just the fact that since I moved in here in 2017, and the road turnover has been something that was coming like in 6 to 8 months, literally the entire time I've been here. And now it's, you know, the end of 2021. I don't want this to wait for the road turnover, because I don't know when the road turnover is going to happen. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I have a baby who's coming in December. And I don't want people going 40 miles per hour down the road. There are 39 units on Woodbury. Most of them have small children, and you know, we need some speed bumps out here. We need physical deterrent to stop the speeding, not signs. And we can't wait for the road turnover. We need this to happen. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Congratulations on your baby coming in, and the curvatures that I believe that staff member was referring to are mainly on the corners. So the curvatures there are set up to slow people down as they're turning around. But as you say, there is a straightaway, very long straightaway there. I've been hoping to run into our traffic designer from many years ago to ask him about that particular feature, because I was surprised at that. And one question that I had is whether, and perhaps members of the neighborhood know that, is whether the traffic has slowed down any after the apartment building went up, because I think the visual feedback from the apartment building being there as opposed to the large open space might encourage some people to slow down. So if anyone has a question for that, they want to answer in the chat or personally, then that's fine. Director Lewis, I saw you. You seem to speak up for a little while. Do you have any comments on the previous speakers' comments?
In terms of the speed hump, we'll have to get an estimate. Again, the traffic engineer's recommendation was that these other measures were likely to be not just more cost effective, but effective in addressing the speeding that does exist, as well as some infractions, maybe less of the latter. And so, again, the recommendation was to proceed with those first. What I heard from that speaker was that maybe the speed hump should come first. And so one thing we could do is just get an estimate on the cost of installing them in locations that have been recommended, and to work with the developer on the possibility of getting those done before the town assumes responsibility for the roads.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Inyang.
Evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I echo everything that Tom said. I think it was spot on. I also live on Woodbury. I live on the corner of the trolley trail in Woodbury, and my car has been sort of sideswiped there, and that's in front of a stop sign, and that's in front of 20 mile per hour speed limit sign as well. I think I have a question in terms of the recommendations that were sort of laid out for this. Was it based on when I read the report, it comes off as sort of two things. It's actually unclear to me that it's almost like speed humps are kind of recommended, but I'm not sure if we met the threshold. So my first question is, are the recommendations based on sort of we've met some minimal threshold, or was it we didn't quite meet it, so maybe let's do some lesser things instead of going the full sort of level of sort of speed deterrence? I guess that's my first question. And the reason why I asked that is, in addition to what I think Tom mentioned in terms of, half of Woodbury for most of the street was sort of under construction, which I think slowed it down. It also was November of 2020. So it was like peak COVID time when I think most people were not driving, as well as, traffic wasn't sort of being split. So I think it was just traffic patterns weren't normal in addition to the construction. So I guess the question on, are these recommendations based on some minimal threshold that was used, or is this more a, once you pass a certain limit or a number of speeding incidents, then everything is at our disposal?
Ms. Barnes, if you could scroll up to the criteria for the installation of speed humps in the memo. And in response to that question, the engineer determined that in fact, all of those 8 criteria were met. Scroll down a little further, scroll back up a little more. Yes, these are them. So these criteria must be met before a speed hump can be installed. And the engineer determined that all of them in fact have been met. Number one is that other measures were looked at and found to be less intrusive. We found that there were other measures that can work, can be effective in addition to speed humps. So in fact, this new stop signs, removal of some stop signs that are not working and are probably more problematic than helpful. Road markings, in addition to speed humps, were thought to be helpful, but in terms of the sequence of installation, the engineer recommended all of the other measures before speed humps, but supported speed humps as well. While it's true that at the time the radar sign was deployed and collecting data, it was at the height of the pandemic. And I think I mentioned that the apartment building was under construction and one side of Van Buren was closed and the other was certainly impacted by the movement of vehicles. At the same time, the ratio of volume to speed was informative. And so we had the volume that we had in each of those locations, and still we had a small amount of vehicles that were speeding during that time. It was a snapshot. And so we can continue to do it periodically to see if the numbers changed as a result of the new apartment building, and with more motorists being back on the road since the pandemic numbers are continuing to decline.
Thank you. So that's helpful. That's actually, like, I think increases the case to the mayor's question of, has the apartment building sort of helped slow it? It hasn't. More people on the road, and I think people are speeding even more. So it wasn't clear. So thank you for clearing up that even under those conditions of suppressed driving, we still had enough incidents to sort of validate the need for this. I think that sort of further makes the case for this. And then I would also sort of echo Tom's point as well, that I think it's important talking to the developer. There's been sort of a back and forth in terms of who's responsible for what or who's negotiating with what. I would implore the town to sort of take a leadership role in this and sort of dictating terms, because I think waiting around for the developer to sort of, whether it's finding a location or sort of agreeing to what measures should be done, I think we'll be short-served if we sort of take that approach. I think it'd be better. I would suggest that the town take a more aggressive stance in sort of dictating terms on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We of course are stymied by the fact that the developer does own the roads still. And so we have to work with them to make any changes and have to maintain reasonable relations with them. One other sort of comment I'll throw in is that we actually saw greater speeding where we have speed cameras installed during the pandemic, just because there were fewer people on the road and they were just putting the pedal to the metal because there's nobody in front of them. That doesn't mean that that happened on Woodbury or any other streets in Riverdale Park Station, but we did see that elsewhere. Mr. Dorsey.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm just going to follow up briefly after my colleagues have already spoken to most of what I was probably going to raise. I just wanted to just briefly mention, we've been working with the Department of with the Director of Public Projects for some time, probably dating back 2 years now. So we're certainly, happy now that the study is rising to the level of coming up in a work session. We certainly hope this will be a continued discussion. Much of the concerns I think that we had regarding the study have already been raised. Our hope is that the monitoring itself will continue, and that that 1 week period will not be the only consideration, even though it may have captured sort of some unique data. Certainly that can't be sort of like the only monitoring period. We hope that will be considered. And as Wendy noted, that itself can be a deterrent. So there is some basis for us not really having a lot of indications of the effectiveness once those monitorings have been removed. So appreciate this being brought up. Also just wanted to, if it's possible to get specifics on the rollout as that information comes out, in terms of what needs to happen before speed humps themselves, if there's any other, considerations, that be considered publicly, that would be helpful. And also that if there are parallel raw data being considered on parallel streets in Riverdale, that we also consider the density of RPS streets, because certainly, as has already been noted, we have quite a few children, nearby playgrounds, schools, as does much of other parts of Riverdale as well. But I think the density is quite unique here. And so when those speeding levels really pick up, the potential for catastrophe is quite high. So again, just appreciate this being raised, and we look forward to future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Are there additional public comments or council comments? I'll just add a few comments in to punctuate a few I've made. One of them is that about a week and a half ago, I heard about a pilot program that had very small speed cameras. So rather than the sort of one installation for covering a pretty large area, that these are much smaller, less intrusive. The description of them was that you would install them on a telephone pole. Of course, there aren't so many telephone poles up in Riverdale Park Station, but still I think we could install them fairly tightly. And there's a study program which the town manager and I are discussing whether we might get in on that. And so conceivably we could be collecting from multiple speed cameras along sections of roads in Riverdale Park Station as part of that. The other thing I'll say is that I'm shooting a little bit from the hip here, but I believe that the idea is that we have funds and we can install some things that might help before we will be able to necessarily get a speed hump in. A speed hump is a decent sized construction project. And so I believe that what Director Lewis is saying is we're going to try some of those things first and continue moving forward on the speed hump as quickly as we can. And I guess the final thing I'll say is that I think everyone who knows me knows that I'm a big fan of automated enforcement for traffic. And I would love to have authorization in state law, both for the micro speed cameras that we're discussing, or stop sign cameras that would automatically issue tickets when someone blows through a stop sign, and for the already allowed but moving slowly in implementation of automated enforcement of truck bans. And so given the interest of the Riverdale Park Station, I will bring up, I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I'll bring up with our state legislators the possibility of stop sign automated enforcement at stop signs. See what we can do there. Okay, any additional comments or thoughts? Mr. Dorsey, you still have your hand up, but I presume that's just left from when you were speaking earlier.
I have a question. So one, I completely agree. I think if especially the stop sign, cameras, whatever could be done, sort of move that along the legislative agenda would be awesome. Is there anything from like an HOA's perspective that can be done to sort of further support some of these, especially the micro speed cameras or anything around there? Is sort of one, my question, let me know if there's anything we can do. I think the second is around the actual, since there were a lot of suggestions for speed calming measures that are not speed humps, will the specifics of sort of what the options are be discussed at a future meeting? Because I think there's probably, if there's any like preference or stuff, I think the community probably has some insight in terms of if we have 3 or 4 options, which ones people would be, I think, more comfortable with in a sort of a taking on initially. So just those are my 2 questions.
I'll jump in. I believe that the options are all spelled out in the long report that's available as part of tonight's packet. So, please read the report at the end of the presentation carefully. I actually remembered I have a couple of questions for Director Lewis about the data tables that are at the very end of this report. And let me see if I can pull them up on my screen. I just closed the agenda. Hold on. So this is item 3. So let me scroll through. Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit. If we can go to page 6, figure 4, just as a backdrop to my question. It gives the average speed by day in half-hour increments, and seeing that somebody was driving even at 4:30 in the morning, someone was driving at 45 miles an hour along that street. It's just shocking to me. And I don't know if there's another way that we can look at the data that exists there. I think the average sort of tends to wash out how fast some people are driving. And so when I got to the end of the report, and I think it is essentially the last, trying to scroll down there myself so I can give you a page number. Yeah, it's the last 3 or 4 pages. Then the thing that confused me is that I think maybe it was just that it was on a different street, is that there were no recorded instances of driving anywhere in the range above 36 to 40 miles an hour. And I was just curious how to reconcile the fact that you have a 45 mile an hour average and yet no one over 35 miles an hour.
I can't answer that, sir. I'd have to look at that and maybe even contact the vendor to see what that might mean or how that might have happened.
Okay. Okay. Well, that was just a question that didn't make sense to me, and so I would appreciate it if you could find that out.
Okay.
Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Regards to some of the queries about what residents could do there, in light of the fact that we're still dealing with a property where the roads are still under the authority of the property owner of Riverdale Park Station, is a writing campaign. Write in as residents there. The more that you push as residents there, along with the town advocating as well, I have a feeling that will draw a substantial amount of attention from the developer to look at this report and take seriously the request for speed humps.
I can't answer that, council member. It may be that that would speed things up. It might be that it might not. I know that
Well,
I think that
you
the
know,
residents have
it's-
certainly said that they've not gotten a lot of movement out of the developer when they've reached out in the past.
Yeah, I think it's just one of these things of being persistent, and to keep pushing. Yeah, they're saying no at that time. You know, I wouldn't take that as a no, you know, on into the future, but I think it's something if residents keep pushing, and there's a continued and growing groundswell of concerns being expressed by residents to the company. And again, the town can press on them as well.
Yes.
It may lead to a different result.
Understood. Tom?
Yes, thank you. So we have raised the issue multiple times over the years. And what happens is it becomes a back and forth game to, you know, the developer says, well, the roads are going to be turned over to the town needs to do this. And the town says, well, the roads are now the developers, so the developer needs to do it. That's what's happened for the last, since I've been here since 2017. So they're going to continue to say that. They're going to continue to say this is the town. And like I said, what I was asking in the chat is if this is a financial issue, because that money was mentioned a couple times, like could we raise the funds to do it? Because honestly, I just want to make sure this gets done. I mean, if it's just financial, is that the main issue?
Please go ahead, Mr. Town Manager.
If I may, we heard from Director Lewis this evening, reviewing all the recommendations and saying that staff agreed with these. And I think what we've heard tonight is there's general support from the mayor and council to have this addressed. And so the next thing Director Lewis indicated was that we are going to look at money, since we didn't budget for these things. The budget was approved at the end of May, but we're going to look in our current budget and see what it is we can get done in the immediate. We don't have an answer on that this evening, but whatever we can get done, we will get done. And whatever we can't free up a couple dollars towards, then we will budget that for a budget that becomes effective on July 1. That doesn't mean that we wait until then to go through a procurement process in that. We wait until we're able to expend the funds on July 1. And so I think what my observation is tonight, the town staff, and I don't speak for the elected body, I'll defer to the mayor for that, but my observation is there's great support for action here. And I think that's what we're all on the same page in doing. So I wouldn't say put out a call to raise funds. Let us see how much these different things are going to cost. Someone earlier had said that they want to see the town lead, and I think that's happening, and that's evident, I think, in moving this forward. And we do need to continue our discussion with the developer. There's a few other angles to road acceptance, and many of which the residents from Riverdale Park Station have brought forward to us, whether that's the trees, whether that's future construction and concerns about damage to the roads once the town does accept them. So I think now we actually are on a good trajectory here. And so I hope that it answers, at least in part, your question, sir.
Did Mr. Inyang, did you have your hand up previously? Do you want to speak? again?
Yeah, just quickly, I think Mr. Town Manager, I appreciate the updates. We won't open up the bake sale drives until we get a number of sort of what this looks like. That's fair. I do you brought up an interesting point about like it's going to take time, sort of procurement. I'm assuming like we don't have a speed hump person, in our back pocket to put in. So I'd like to, just again, sort of be mindful of that. Not just in the road code like turnover process, but just, I think the frustration that you're experiencing and hearing today is that we've been living in this for 4 years, and the excuse was always, well, the town doesn't own the roads. And I know that's its own process with a bunch of stuff. So if this gets lumped into a larger conversation, the fear is that, we can be going on year 5 or 6. And then I think the last thing was just, I put in the comments, but my question wasn't necessarily about, and maybe for Director Lewis, there were a lot of suggestions in there, and I'm aware of all of them. Should this report be read that we will do all? My understanding, I thought I was at, maybe there's 10 suggestions. We could choose to do however many we want. So my question was more so, is there going to be another conversation about which ones we select, or is the idea that we're going to do all of the suggested recommendations in the report?
It's the latter, that we would do all of the recommendations in the report. The question is timing. And what the staff is proposing is that we identify those that we can fund out of the current budget.
Got it.
Most likely the road markings and new stop signs. And of course, deploying the speed radar signs.
Thank you.
Director Lewis, can you just sort of speak to the whole logistical process for installing a speed hump? I mean, we have, some red dots on a map right now and some suggestions for where they might go. But in the past, then there's been, some careful engineering that's had to go in, the procurement process that was already discussed. Is there a permitting step that we have to go through the county, or is that waived because it's our roads and so on? Can you just lead us through that entire process just so we know what the timescale is?
I don't know it absolutely, but what I understand is that it would be different depending upon who owns the road. So if the developer does it, that might require some county involvement. I'm not certain, but it's possible. If the town does it, we do not. If the town does the speed humps after we take responsibility for the roads, I don't believe county action is needed, but certainly there will need to be some engineering done on where the speed humps are located, their size. And in the report, we talked about the feedback from the fire department. They would prefer a split hump. Getting that style hump designed and installed is a process.
And so what's the sort of, assuming that we didn't need a county process involved, that either the developer or the town could just move ahead without county permits, what is the rough time scale for the whole process?
It's a wild guess. I don't think designing them will take a lot of time. So we're talking about, getting a contract with one of the on-call engineers. We'll probably do that in several weeks, and getting a design several weeks after that. Installation will really depend upon when we attempt to do it, what's possible during the winter months, or how long we'd have to wait until the weather will cooperate. So I would think between 4 and 6 months to actually have them in the ground, if you will.
Okay, and so that's sort of at this point of the year, that's about the fastest that we could move. And at least part of that, right. I suspect the residents of who are here this evening don't know that asphalt production ceases in the winter. Right. And so we can't actually buy the asphalt to put a speed hump in until it warms up in the spring.
And that, asphalt is applied at a certain high temperature, and with the ground at 30 degrees, it can't be done. So between the plants closing and the temperatures or ground temperature, it can't be done during the winter months.
Okay. Thank you for that timescale. I just wanted to to sort of discuss some of the logistics there, and make sure everyone understood that we can't put a speed hump up tomorrow. That there's a process that even if Bill Gates or one of those other guys opened up their purse and gave us as much money as we wanted, it would be difficult to get something in.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could add just one thing.
Mhm.
But I think it's important for the community to know that we're not going to wait till the new budget to begin that process.
Right.
We're going to start that process in the next several weeks. We have a few projects that are being launched. I mentioned some of them in my earlier report, and we will begin this process in earnest. So things that we do have to budget come July 1, we'll be able to implement.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? Thank all of you who came and shared your opinion, shared the information. As the town manager said, and as some council members said, then I think we're ready to move forward on this. And I will put it certainly on my list to bother the town manager about every couple of weeks. So let's see what we can do. And with that, let's move on to the next item on our agenda. Planning assistance to municipalities and communities for tree inventory and condition assessment.
Thank you again. Staff will seek mayor and council approval of a resolution at the legislative session on December 5th in support of an application for PAMC funding and technical assistance to complete a townwide tree inventory and condition assessment. The Planning Assistance to Municipalities and Community Program, PAMC, supports planning related projects that seek to implement recommendations in approved plan or approved plans or achieve a planned goal. A tree inventory to maintain the town's urban forest is an eligible program activity. The PAMC can be both a source of financing and technical assistance. It will help inform the town's tree maintenance program. And there is a funding limit of up to $65,000. However, actual funding will be based on the program's fiscal year budget, the number of requests from municipalities and communities that are received by the planning department, and the lowest cost proposal from the agency's on-call consultants. The town must submit an application for funding and technical assistance and respond to provide some of the information that's requested in terms of how the information will be used, what benefits we anticipate in both the short and long run from funding of the project. The last tree inventory for the town was completed in 2017. My predecessor, in fact, had established a biennial process for updating the tree inventory. Since 2019, we've lost a little more than 30 trees. Several more are slated for removal in the next couple of weeks due to disease and decay. The good news is that over 60 trees have been planted the last several planting seasons, and most of them by CCAR. And CCAR will plant an additional 32 trees by December of this year. With the acceptance of the infrastructure in Riverdale Park Station, the town will add trees located in the residential sections of the community to its inventory. We expect that number to be pretty substantial. Additionally, the condition of many trees in the town's current inventory have changed, due in part to the effects of climate change, age, and pruning by both the town and utility companies, making the existing condition data in the 2019 inventory unreliable. The scope of the recent inventories were limited to species, diameter at breast height, existing conditions, and maintenance recommendations for only some trees. We didn't get a recommendation for how to maintain all of our trees, which is something we do need. And the data was presented in a spreadsheet format saved as a PDF, preventing us from being able to generate reports based on specific data points. Staff is proposing to significantly broaden the scope of the new tree inventory and condition assessment to include more characteristics of the tree, like height, in addition to diameter at breast height, condition of the crown, structural defects, and risk factors for different tree species, site attributes, the presence of curb and gutters, overhead power lines, proximity to other trees, the trees' impacts on existing infrastructure. We have many locations where tree roots have pushed up sidewalks, have virtually gobbled up curbs, and that information is important to sort of understanding the work that we need to do with our trees and where and what species should be planted in other locations, and information on vacant tree sites and appropriate tree species for these sites. Staff will also like to see the format of to change the format of the final product from an Excel spreadsheet to a geographic database format that allows changes to be made or updates to be made more easily to the database, and allows the data to be mapped by data point. As well as receiving as a final product a written report that summarizes the data on tree types, tree diversity, overall existing conditions, but also to discuss tree health from a more comprehensive point of view, canopy coverage, tree population and diversity, the extent of damage to the infrastructure, and community benefit from the town's tree inventory. The new inventory is essential to the development of a tree maintenance program that will guide funding decisions and maintenance activities over the next several years, with the goal of preserving and growing this important community asset. If the program is not funded through PAMC, staff will request CIP funding in fiscal year 2023 and seek to have the inventory and condition assessment and those final products completed by the end of 2023. If funded, funding will be announced earlier in the new year, and hopefully enough progress is made to inform the size of this year's or next fiscal year's tree maintenance and planting budget. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Director Lewis. I have one question before I even recognize anyone else, and that is you mentioned in your discussion the urban tree canopy. And is this purely focused on town-owned trees or on all of the trees in town?
Town-owned trees.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Right of way. We have very few properties and very few trees on those properties, so it's primarily, overwhelmingly, the street trees, right-of-way trees.
Okay, that was my assumption, but I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Does anyone else have questions for Director Lewis? Ms. Katz.
Hi, thank you so much, Director Lewis. This sounds wonderful. Quite a big effort too, and I really laud you and your staff for committing to this. I think this is impactful for the present and future of our town. Really will create an atmosphere or an environment here that is really important to create. So thank you so much for that. I was curious though, if we have ever received PAMC program funding before. And the reason I ask is I'm just thinking, I know you have a backup plan if you don't get that funding, but do you think, is there any value to you for maybe reaching out to the Sustainable Maryland program that might have some experience with other municipalities getting funding that might help assist with that application?
I've actually been on both sides of this program. When I worked in the planning department, my division had responsibility for PAMC. They've made some changes to it over the last several years. What I found most important about it is not just the funding, but the technical assistance that comes along with it. And the fact that the project is largely handled by the planning staff. And as you know, our Department of Public Works is very small. I'm the only one that's doing the work that I'm doing. And so to get that technical assistance and project management resource is essential, will be extremely helpful.
Well, great. Then it sounds like you're the right person that we're lucky to have you as far as the experience you have with this program in the past. Right?
And the planners reached out to us. They were talking with the town of Edmonston about a PAMC grant. And while they were in our area of the county, reached out to me to ask if the town had a project, and this was certainly high on our list to propose. That doesn't say anything about whether or not we'll be funded or how we'll stack up against the other requests, but they have a $300,000 budget for FY 2020, and I don't think they've used any of those funds at this time. So I've been led to believe we have a good chance for getting funding, and definitely the program is, our project is a eligible project for funding. Yeah,
Sounds
so I'm
promising.
pretty optimistic. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Are there additional questions or comments regarding this item?
Director, do we have an I guess an anticipation of the expected increase in costs with the additional trees that are sort of coming under town control once the Riverdale Park Station development gets turned over? I forget how many trees exactly it is, but I know that you've sort of put it in here that you're anticipating that for the next budget. But do we have like a understanding of this, at least in terms of scope? How many more trees or upkeep or overhead that would be?
Not at this point. So one of the things we're going to do as part of the process for assuming these responsibilities is to do an inventory of the infrastructure, the components of the infrastructure that we will be taking on. So I don't have a count. They're fairly new trees. There are different opinions about the health of those trees. Our arborist had a pretty positive response to what he saw in an inventory he did a couple of years ago. But no, I don't have that information at this time.
Okay, thank you. And then these funds are allocated annually, or is this sort of like they have money now and it's not guaranteed every year that we could sort of apply for it?
Actually, what we're specifically requesting is money to do the new inventory. And so once we have the information on the number of trees, the species diversity, the health of our trees, the setting or attributes of where the trees are located, the existing environment, it will inform what our maintenance program should be. And we would fund that primarily through capital improvement funds or other dollars that are out there that we might be eligible for in order to maintain our inventory. But this money is simply to do the inventory. And it's a large effort, as Ms. Katz mentioned.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions or comments on this item? So this seems to me to just be something we should do. We should apply for it, and I hope we get it. I'm looking forward to having the data and be able to improve, maintain, and even improve the town street canopy. So sounds good. Okay, next item, review and recommended updates to the Partners in Economic Recovery programs.
Director Shelton, can you lead us through this, please?
I would be happy to. Good evening again, Mayor and Council and members of the public. As a bit of background, on March 25th, 2020, the Mayor and Council approved a number of different programs under the umbrella of the Partners in Economic Recovery as part of the initial response to the pandemic. These were a combination of both new programs and amendments to existing programs designed to make it easier for businesses and residents to more easily participate during this pandemic. So the first of the programs that I would like to talk about tonight is the Farmers Market Dollars. This has been the most successful of our Partners in Economic Recovery programs. We currently have 236 households. And for reference to those who may not be aware, it provides up to $25 for residents to spend at the farmers market if they declare themselves in need of assistance because of the pandemic. Currently, to date, the program has provided residents with $271,000 worth of food. The second program I'd like to discuss is the Business Growth Grant program. The mayor and council approved amending the program to reduce the required match from a 10-to-1 to a 2-to-1 match, and it expanded eligible expenses to include not only hard construction costs, but soft construction costs as well. And this is a business growth grant is more for large construction projects or interior renovations. We've had 2 businesses that have participated in the amended program, and in total we have distributed $10,000 through this program since it's been amended. The Business Improving Grant program is designed more for exterior and facade type improvements. This program was amended to include eligible expenses designed for more interior work to help serve to attract commerce on the inside of the store. So something in the common areas on the inside. We've had 1 business apply and receive grant funding for the Business Improvement Grant. It's been amended, and they received $2,500. The fourth program is the Emergency Repair Program. This is a program that provides residents in need with additional reimbursement to help pay for emergency repairs to something like a furnace, or it was very commonly used during the flooding of the September, I forget which day it was, but the September of 2020 flood. And so far we've had 12 residents participate in the program, and they've received just over $17,000 in total. And the last effort that I'd like to talk about from the Partners in Economic Recovery program was the waiving of residential building permit fees. The town approved waiving residential building permit fees for projects conducted by residents in town. So not to include commercial properties, or not commercial property, but commercial developers building new single-family homes, but rather residents constructing work on their own property. So far, to date, this year we've waived just over $8,000 in residential building permit fees. These programs have been amended to extend their sunset and deadlines. Initially, these were meant to expire at the end of 2020. They were then extended through the end of this calendar year, and they are set to expire at the end of December. Because the pandemic still has a notable impact on the town's economy, staff requests that the mayor and council adopt 4 resolutions and a motion at the December 6th legislative meeting to extend the programs and amendments for an additional calendar year. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Chelton. I don't see anybody else's hand up, so I'll start with the first question again. You mentioned under the Farmers Market Dollar Program that this program is eligible for reimbursement under ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act. Are the other programs eligible, or has that been determined?
So this was the highest priority for us to determine whether or not it would be reimbursed under the American Rescue Plan Act, primarily because it's, like I said before, yeah,
yes,
we provided over $250,000 to residents for food. And so I don't believe it would be necessary for the other programs. I think they would be, but I could certainly look into that more carefully to see if that's something that we could have reimbursed as well.
Okay, thank you. And also, can you repeat again how many families are taking advantage of the farmers market dollar program right now?
Yes, we have 236 households.
Okay, so that's up from my last memory. Last memory was about 200, so it's actually up from then.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, those are all my questions at this time. Council, members of the public, do you have any questions? Okay, I think lack of questions suggests that there's general support for it among the council. Thank you for the presentation and the information. Let's move on to next item, item 6, process for appointment of chief of police.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and members of council and the community, as well as the staff team. So I tried to be succinct in the packet memo, and so I'll review it briefly and be able to respond to any questions or concerns. As we all know, we have a vacancy in the position of chief of police, and I have appointed an acting chief of police, and that's Assistant Chief Gwixon is acting in that role. The town charter stipulates how department heads are appointed, and I included a brief excerpt from the charter there to explain that. This is the first appointment of a chief of police since the change in the form of government and the subsequent changes to the charter. The town has previously engaged with the Novak Consulting Group, and that was a process that I went through, and when the then council made the appointment of the first town manager. So I've been in contact with them, and we talked through what a process would look like. And I've also have read a lot on this topic, and ICMA puts out some information, and so does the International Association of Chiefs of Police, that they put out information as well. And where I have landed is that I would like to, well, I plan to consult with the Novak Group, now known as Raftellus, to have them conduct an community outreach and input component for the development of a profile of what it is that we are looking for in our next chief of police. And the third paragraph down, the goal of this exercise for the profile is to identify the organization's needs, the strategic challenges of the position. That's where a lot of the community things come in, and the personal professional characteristics of the desired candidate. It's going to be extremely important that the town staff work with this consultant to make sure that we are reaching as diverse of an audience as the town is. To have reach and reach through different methodologies to ensure that we are meeting people where they are. We've learned, for example, in some of our more recent survey efforts, that we miss segments of our population if we only have things online. And so we will make sure that we have paper copies of input surveys, and we will work with the consultant to make sure that that we are reaching a diverse a very diverse group. And so all that input will go to Raftellus, and they will produce for us a position profile as if they were running a full recruitment. That's like the first step in running a full recruitment. And that's an exercise for the council members who were here at the time that you should be familiar, that they put together a profile for what the council was looking for in a town manager. And so once that's complete, I will share that with the council and the community and the department. And it's at that time that any interested internal candidates would have an opportunity to make themselves known to me. And then I will have the profile and perhaps internal candidates to compare the profile with the internal candidates. And so it's possible at that point that Raftellus's involvement may end if I have a recommendation to the council for an internal appointment. And there's a 10-day comment period where whenever I make a selection, I will meet with the council in a closed session to discuss what my intention is and to receive your feedback. And you would have 10 days to then comment back to me to give me your thoughts but before any appointment would be made. If there is not, I keep reaching to the screen to scroll it. I'm sorry, I got to reach to my screen to my left here. If there are not internal candidates or an internal candidate, one or more, then it would be my intent to continue working with Raftellus for full recruitment. The cost of their initial exercise is well within my spending authority, the town manager's spending authority. It's right at about $11,000. However, if a full recruitment's needed, the total cost would be about $28,000, counting the first 11. And so I believe that that we can cover this through vacancy savings. I know we can for the initial part. And then if need be, we would still have additional vacancy savings, and then we have our contingency fund as well. So that's the process. And I've discussed this with the mayor prior to today's meeting to see if he had any initial input. And so, Mr. Mayor, with that, I'll take questions from you or from others.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. This is almost exactly what I was expecting. So council members, members of the public, any questions for the town manager? Okay, I think we have a good process. I appreciate that we are being deliberate and careful in choosing our next police chief. It's a very important position. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Proposed Riverdale Park Board of Elections.
Director Barnes, can you lead us through this section, please?
Certainly, it would be my pleasure. Good evening, Mayor Thompson, members of the council, and members of the public. We're here tonight seeking feedback from the mayor, council, and public on proposed changes to the town charter and town code to create a board of elections for the town of Riverdale Park. As we've been discussing for a little over a year now, there are significant changes that are needed to the town election process. And as the first step in that process, the proposal is to establish as a best practice a local board of elections. As we discussed at the last work session, staff are recommending a board of elections that would be appointed by the mayor and council for 2-year terms, beginning on even years, so on non-election years. The board would consist of 5 members and would include the chief and deputy chief election judges, that have been established by Resolution 2021 R12. The board would plan and conduct regular and special elections in coordination with the town clerk. They would periodically review town election procedures and best practices. They would solicit community input and make recommendation regarding changes to the town election process. They would also serve as election judges on election day. They would recommend 3 additional qualified individuals to the mayor and council for appointment as election judges. And they would also conduct voter education programs and prepare and distribute voter outreach materials. At the October 25th work session, there was support for the creation of the Board of Elections. So staff met with Town Attorney Fred Sussman and identified some revisions that needed to be made to the town charter and code, which would allow us to create a Board of Elections. So attached, you'll find a list, and of course, this is not in legislative format yet, but these are some changes that were drafted with Town Attorney Fred Sussman and some recommended changes to the charter and code. The goal is to have as few changes as possible at this step in the process to simply allow for the creation of a Board of Elections, and then for that Board of Elections to hold some community meetings, public meetings, and to start brainstorming and making recommendations to the mayor and council for additional changes to the election process. So it's envisioned that this will be more of a 2-step process. So just to run through section Article 5, of course, in the town charter deals with nominations and elections. Section 502 deals with the supervision of town elections, and that's where the meat, if you will, of the Board of Elections would live. This is language that was drafted, again, in consultation with the town attorney. A couple things I wanted to point out. At the work session, there was some discussion about having a 16-year-old or 17-year-old as a member of the Board of Elections, and we were able to incorporate that role as an advisory role. So that is listed, I believe, in section letter C. I can go through each one of these, Mr. Mayor, or we can talk about them a little bit more. I know it's getting a little bit late, but this would outline just the specific duties and responsibilities. So this is the charter section that really speaks to the items that were on the cover memo, the things that we just talked about, the purpose of the Board of Elections. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, there are some highlighted sections that the town attorney has recommended that we also update as part of this package. So these are places where maybe just the judges of election or the chief election judge were granted the responsibility. And this is opening it up to create the place, if you will, for the Board of Elections. So we have several sections of the town charter that would need to be revised. And then if you go a little bit further down, there's some sections in the town code that would need to be revised. Again, these are the smallest number of revisions to simply give that proposed Board of Elections, and then to be able to move into the next phase, which will be to really get down to the changes in the election process. I'm happy to answer any questions. This is quite a bit of lots of words, but it'll take some time to review and maybe digest, and then I would love if we could discuss it again, maybe at the end of December.
Thank you, Director Barnes, for your work coordinating all this information and presenting it to us. Are there questions for Director Barnes? Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Barnes, as you're putting this together, when would you like to see this all, for lack of a better term, done and dusted?
Well, thank you for that question, because I certainly do have a plan in mind. I would like to see if it was possible to get this first bunch of legislation perhaps introduced in January. That would put us in March by the time a Board of Elections would be in place. And then I was hoping that we could start with some public discussions. As I'm sure you're fully aware, the chief and deputy chief, current chief and deputy chief election judges are fully invested in this process, and they're eager to collect more information from the public. So I still hold true that I think it could be a year-long process, but I think once we get to the establishment of the Board of Elections, things will be moving as quickly as possible. I do want to point out that during this budget process, we'll have to budget for a town election, and the style of town election, if you will certainly determine the budget. So there will be a little bit of guessing, if you will, or kind of getting a feel for what the community has expressed their interest in, and some interest the council has already expressed when we budget this year. But before we know it, it'll be an election year again. So we'll move as quickly as possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, because one of the things is you're wanting to do this, you know, an appointment on even years, and well, that's what we have coming up. So
Certainly.
And I would take it you were probably looking that these appointments are done well ahead of the election filing times.
Certainly.
And those begin roughly, I think petitions are due, if I remember right, early part of April. So I would imagine you probably want to have the new boards in place really no later than September, if not
Certainly.
sooner, or at the start of a fiscal year. I'm estimating here. So
I believe that Director Barnes is hoping that we actually have a Board of Elections appointed sometime in March of 2022. So
That
all
is
of
my
the
goal,
all the
yes.
laws put into place, changes put in, I's dotted, T's crossed, and members nominated and approved by March, or maybe as late as April, but hopefully let's aim for March.
okay, I thought she was saying it was approved and going into effect at that time, and then discussions would ensue.
Well, I think it's a matter of recruiting and approving members at that point, once it's in place, and that can be pretty fast.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Siddiq, please.
So are we going to vote on this next session?
We are not going to vote on it in December. We're going to be maybe an introduction in January is the current plan. So you have several weeks, or more than a month to consider it. I actually reviewed this and have some thoughts about wording, but I need to give it a more careful review before I say anything to anybody except for myself. So we'll go for that.
I also expect feedback from the chief and deputy chief election judge. They are very vested in the process, so they're great with giving good feedback.
Fantastic. Okay, if there are no additional questions or comments, let's move on to item 8, Prince George's County Climate Action Plan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll keep it brief. So there's an opportunity for the town to comment. The comment period runs from November 1 to December 1. So the council will not meet again before the comment period ends. And so we're looking for general consensus, if you will, whether or not the council is good with sending a letter, and are there things that you would like to see in a letter. The staff can always, as we have on other occasions, take the first run at this with a draft and then work with the mayor on tweaking and finalizing language. I think it's important. It meets several of our vision and commitment statements, including most notably our commitment statement to sustainability. We did have outreach from Mike Honeyhake from Sustainable Maryland. asking for the town to comment, and I believe he had reached out to all the sustainability committees in his network, and he was very enthused that we had this on the agenda for discussion this evening.
Very good. I have not had a chance to look at it yet. Can you tell me approximately how many pages the climate action plan is, just so I can?
I cannot. Ms. Barnes?
I believe it was 200 and I believe 52. I could be wrong, but it was quite a few pages.
Yeah, I was worried about that. Okay, I will. I'll go to Vigilante and buy some more coffee and try to get a read in over the next couple of weeks. Okay, are there additional council questions or comments on this? Councilmember Foe, you videoed in.
I don't. I feel bad when I see people on and off, and I'm sitting here listening. So I spend some time on and off camera. That's it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for this? Ms. Katz, do you think the Sustainability Committee might provide us some feedback on this?
Realistically, probably not. The timeline on this is pretty. They are aware of it. I definitely sent out a message about it if they hadn't gotten that message from other sources, which have been out there as well. And I've not looked at the whole thing yet either. But once again, I do appreciate staff, taking the initiative to say that it aligns with the sustainability vision for the town, et cetera. So that gives me a lot of confidence. And yeah, that's all I have to say, I guess, at this point.
Okay, great.
I'm going to put a link in the chat to the page for it, because I do have that up right now.
Okay. Any additional comments? Okay, let's all scrub our reading glasses off and get ready to go on that. Next item, item 9, statewide redistricting.
And Mr. Mayor, the memo is self-explanatory. This is here. Whether or not the council wants to weigh in at all on the action on the statewide redistricting. We just had the discussions about county redistricting, and thought this would be an opportunity should the mayor and council want to weigh in on this.
Okay, thank you. I hope the council has had a chance to read the memo. I actually, at the PGCMA meeting last week, we had a joint meeting with Montgomery County. There was a presentation about the redistricting process, and apparently the General Assembly has also generated some maps, as well as the governor's Citizens Redistricting Commission. And I have not been able to track those maps down yet. So if staff can find them, then that's great. And otherwise I'll try to sharpen my Google skills and see if I can track them down myself. But I have heard that they are out there, and presumably the General Assembly's maps are where they are going to at least be starting, since they generated them, but we'll see whether they incorporate some of the features from the Citizens Redistricting Commission map or not. But I agree that I wanted the opportunity to have the council weigh in on these maps.
We will look for those maps, sir.
And if you can't find them, actually, I realized that I should reach out to our General Assembly representatives, and they should be able to find them pretty quickly, I would imagine. Hope that they've been involved in making them. Okay, any additional council questions or comments on this item? Okay, let's move to item 10, Town Manager Annual Performance Review Process. So I don't have anything in front of me. Those of you who were on the council in the past know that each year we do a performance review as the town manager's collective supervisors. of his performance over the year. And the way that this is run in the past is a multi-section questionnaire with numeric ratings on several different sections, and an opportunity to write comments in should you feel free. And so those are typically, the questionnaires are typically distributed in late December, early January, ideally to be filled out on Mr. Lestitian's anniversary day with the town, which I can't remember if it was January 19th or 20th.
It's the 19th, sir.
I thought it was the 19th, but wasn't quite sure. And it was very close to inauguration day, 1 year at least. And so, but many people have filled it out a few days before that, and I think that that's generally okay. So I will come out with a schedule, and I'm going to follow the report format that we had after discussions last year, which was simply to collate the responses and present that as a spreadsheet with some analysis and summary of what I saw in it that will be approved by the council. So expect a schedule next when we meet, and I would like it if the council could adopt that schedule, because it's pretty tight schedule. It's a lot of work to do this and to bring everything together, and I hope to have that adopted by the council on December 6th, and I can move forward at that time with any revisions to the questionnaire. And that's it. Any questions or comments? And we have a bunch of closed meetings surrounding this, since we are reviewing his performance and want to have a free discussion of any feedback. So we have typically had a meeting of the council to discuss, to review the draft report, and then a meeting with Mr. Lestitian himself to convey the results. Okay. No questions or comments. We can move on. Item 11, the minutes. Please review them and provide any comments back to Director Barnes or the town manager. And that brings us to new business. Are there any items of new business? Okay, that brings us to unfinished business. And I had an item of unfinished business, which was committee assignments. So give me a second to get relevant section of town code up. So chapter 2 of town code administration, section 2-1 is committees. And the statement says the mayor, with the approval of the council, shall appoint standing and other committees of the council to perform such functions and be composed of such members as the mayor may designate. The standing committees, so these are the mandatory ones, shall be finance, public works, public safety, and legislative. And just to read briefly, I'm not going to go into legislative as much. Finance is concerned with expenditures, revenue, and budgetary items. Public works is concerned with maintenance and sanitation of streets and public grounds. Public safety is concerned with police, fire, and safety matters. And legislative has a long description, but it's basically has to do with reviewing legislation and generating legislation. And I have come up with chairs and numbers for that. The council may remember that I had this in late June when we found out that the previous council member from Ward 1 was resigning, and it shook up my entire carefully balanced out set of committee assignments. And so we simply appointed Councilmember Lingua as chair of finance committee and vice mayor, so there would be a vice mayor. So I have the rest of you assigned to committees with chairmanships, and I've added 2 committees. One is a long-standing ad hoc committee, which is community affairs, and the last one also committee that has come and gone, economic development, and I've renamed that to economic development and recovery. And I believe that that committee will have significant input on reviewing some of the procedures of the ARPA spending. And before I sort of go on, I'll just say that in the distant past, perhaps 10 years and more ago, then these committees tended to meet regularly. The finance committee typically met at least quarterly, and then the finance chair would run the budget hearings in the spring. Public safety at sometimes met monthly, other times met quarterly. Public works would often meet monthly. And that can happen again, or that cannot. These committees will run and will have meetings as determined by the chair and the members. And I am happy to discuss that with all members of the council, but I am required by the code to appoint members to these committees, and so that will be my plan. I will send a draft to the council members, hopefully this evening before I go to sleep, so that you can review it and get back to me individually over the next few weeks and see if any adjustments are required. That is all I have to say. Any questions or comments? I've tried to take everyone's interests and, as I understand them, their strengths into account in how I have distributed you throughout these committees. Councilmember Lingua.
Look forward to seeing what you have in mind.
Very good. There's an additional item of unfinished business, council member.
Yes. Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor. I received late last week an email from a former university park mayor, John Corey, and he was writing to me to ask for assistance in the matter of funding for the Greater Riverdale Cares, Route 1 Community Cares, restaurant support and food distribution efforts. Essentially what he is wanting to establish is that the reason he was getting in touch with me is that the group had in the late summer, early fall, they'd submitted a request to the town and other municipalities for funds in an amount of 0.5% of the projected ARPA funds the town would be receiving to go towards the support of the program. And he had pointed out that at the time of this email he sent, we had not heard back. They had not been heard back from the town, and it's giving them the impression that a response may not be coming until later in our standard budget cycle, which would put a response around March or April. He says he understands the necessity of planning, but what they're hoping to get from the town now is a better understanding of our thinking on the matter, as Greater Riverdale Cares and Route 1 Community Cares is in the process of creating their 2022 budget. And one of the things that they are looking to do is to include William Wirt in their program for 2022. And as a recap, over the past 16 months, the group has raised over $220,000 in support of the program, be that from private individuals and municipalities, along the Route 1 corridor. And also, I would add along the Central Kenilworth Avenue corridor, which has allowed the group to purchase and distribute over 20,000 meals during that time. And what they're currently in the process of attempting to raise, at a minimum, is an additional 400,000 to continue the program until the end of 2022. They're seeing that this continuation is merited due to a number of reasons. That being a continued and significant demand for food by at-risk families. Based on their surveys that they've done, be they informal, they discovered that the demand for food had tripled over pre-pandemic levels. And while it had gone down and then plateaued at about twice the level, they started to see a rise again over the past 4 to 6 weeks. While they see it's possible that demand may abate over the next month or two, their feeling is that the demand will return to, they do not believe, they do not believe that demand will return to pre-pandemic levels until well into fall of 2022. Another reason they gave is that from the aspect of how it's helping restaurants, the restaurants that have been a part of the program they're seeing have not fully recovered their customer base, and they are still working with reduced staff. They're seeing that part of the problem is wariness by consumers in the face of the pandemic, as well as what they're seeing increases in prices and menus, which has occurred over the past few months. And this is making it difficult for restaurants to rebuild their staff, both because of the health risk and as well as the shift in how they're looking to compensate their employees and change away from the low wage and benefit structure of the restaurant industry. And the third point that I brought up previously is the fact that they would like to expand their operation to help with food distribution to William Wirt Middle School. And they're seeing there that a demand of up to 600 meals a week, which would be doubling their normal weekly distribution effort. Mr. DeVore has said that if the council would like, they can make a presentation and explain more and spell out more of the numbers if the council feels that that is necessary. As we have donated to this in the past, I think it would be prudent to see this through, to help them see this through till the end of 2022. And I have no issue with meeting their request of allocating 0.5% of the ARPA funds to help with this program. As it is, there are a number of Riverdale Park businesses that are involved in this program, and this will be helping out a good-sized portion of the town population who are at-risk families.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Town Manager, please speak.
If I may, council member, I understand that you were told that town staff have not been responsive. That is
Pardon?
that town staff did not respond to the inquiries. And that's simply not true. Director Barnes has had multiple conversations with representatives from these programs. And as we all know, the town, the mayor and council have made contributions to these programs. And that the programs do good things. And what the folks were told was the same thing that the staff believed was the plan forward, and that was that there would be an application process for nonprofits to apply. And so that's the message that that was delivered to them. It's my understanding that they didn't like hearing that, and that may explain the recollection that that the town staff did not reply. Not sure, but town staff have been very responsive to all the inquiries that we've received, and we've been telling everyone the same message. We take no position on the timing of this or the merits of this program. We will adjust however the mayor and council direct. And my only caution would be if one group is being considered differently from the schedule that we had initially discussed, that we should then change that timeline for the others, would be my only, just on process. That would be my only recommendation to the council.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other thoughts?
I believe that a consistent schedule is also a good idea, just from a process point of view. I'm wondering whether we can use any funds that we have currently available, not out of the ARPA funds, to mitigate the current situation, at least for a little while we get the ARPA process underway. And I suspect the town staff doesn't have an answer for us at this exact moment, but perhaps they could get us something in email over the next several days.
That's correct, sir. So we could look at the Economic Development Fund. That's what we funded the previous. I think we've contributed $20,000 so far. So just under 10% of the total amount that they've raised. And we'll be able to give you an answer within a few days on that. And if the council would like us to move the date, we had picked March to have the rollout. We're doing a lot of reading and a lot of homework and developing thoughts for different programs, and plan to return to the council for your input on all those things. So we were looking at March. If we want the nonprofit application to roll out sooner, if I should say if you want, not we, if you want that done sooner, we will adjust our schedules accordingly.
So the other
Wow.
The other
Go ahead, I'm
statement,
sorry.
the other statement that I'll make is that if my hastily punched in calculations and checked in my head are correct, then 1/2 of 1% of our ARPA funds for what's currently in the bank, and that's all that I think we're willing to expend at this time, would be similar to the amount that we've already given to the program. So we have been, generous with the funds we've given to the program so far.
Quite.
And it's just a matter of seeing what we can do to address the immediate need that's identified by Mayor Tabori, and seeing what to do about the process moving forward. What are your thoughts, Councilmember?
My thoughts.
Yes.
Well, as I'd stated before, I would like to be able to find some way to see them through to the end of 2022 with their programs, as is it's going to be helping a number of our businesses in town who are part of this program, and B, it's going to also be helping a number of our residents in town as well, especially with their taking on William Wirt. At the same time, I want to make sure that staff is able to have the time and the wherewithal to comfortably set up the ARP, stand up the process for receiving requests for the ARPA funds that the town is receiving. And as has been mentioned before, that there is a consistency and transparency to the process, and that we're not essentially jumping the gun. Now, what's kind of unique about dealing with Greater Riverdale Cares and Route 1 Community Cares is that this is something that we had been engaged in prior to the apportionment of these federal funds. So I would think that whatever staff does come back in identifying in funds, that whatever amount that would be able to be appropriated towards their efforts now is considered as part of an aggregate amount that the town would be making for 2020, for their 2022 budget cycle through that end of 2022. And then I think then that would allow for staff to be able to keep in line their development for screening for requests for ARPA funds, as well as being able to assemble the fiscal year budget for 23. That's about as far as my thinking's taking me on this.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add one thing,
Please.
because I think it would help the council. The other request, we received another request also to address food insecurity, and that's from Pastor Ben and and his organization.
Yes.
And now I believe that's called Passion and Compassion Ministries.
Yeah.
And so we have two asking for the same or similar purpose to serve those who are experiencing food insecurity. And so I think just knowing that we have at least two, but whatever timetable the council wants to see on this, I think that just highlights the need for consistency in terms of outreach and advertising and letting the organizations that are involved in this apply at the same time. And that way the mayor and council will have a complete picture as you're deciding how money should be allocated.
Councilmember Foe.
Yes, we've moved to the portion of this meeting where I have to connect via my phone. Yeah. How much money do we have? Is there anybody on staff that knows how much money we have left in our social giving fund? I believe it's 8,000, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's about 8,000, and so yes, yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay. No, I was just wondering. I mean, these are all incredible programs, but I just feel like when we're talking about ARPA funds, we're talking about once in a generation investment that we can put into our communities. So I just get concerned about social giving, and I believe it needs to be a dialogue amongst the entire council about how we view it and what percentage we would be willing to distribute in that methodology. I don't want to get. I don't want to piecemeal it out one at a time. I feel like a slower approach where we can evaluate those givers. We know CCAR CDC and the food program is remarkable, and we've given in the past. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I just want to make sure that we're not overextending ourselves too early on in this process. That's all I have to add.
Okay. So I think we need to perhaps continue this discussion consistent with the Open Meetings Act, of course, over the next couple of weeks and see if we can come to a consensus on how to move forward by the next meeting, or at least, an opening idea of where to go starting at the next meeting.
Well, I think if we can put this on for discussion in December, I think
Yeah,
that'd be
yeah.
great.
Definitely, but I think it'd be a good idea for us, you and me at least, to have a discussion between now and then.
Sure, happy to. I had one of the things when I to the town manager's point. Yes, that's true about the compassion ministries. Because I at tonight's event, the District 3 event, I did see Pastor Sly there, and he saddled up to me, dropped an arm around my shoulder, and whispered in my ear. He says, "I'm going to come talking to you about funding." And I said, "Fine, please, provide us numbers, and we'll go from there." So I've given him that information.
I wouldn't expect anything less from Pastor Sly.
So, and he reminded me he's been doing this for 20 years now. So he was surprised to be specific as to what he's looking for in terms of funding. What he would request from the town. Would you like me to convey to former Mayor Tabori that we'll be discussing this more in December?
Yes, I think that would be good.
Okay, I'll do that.
And the last thing from me, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'll work with Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones, and we'll get an email circulated to the council by close of business Wednesday on the condition of our current economic development activity and whether or not there's funding there.
Okay,
Thank
that
you.
would be good.
That will be very helpful. Okay, any other discussion of this item? Any other unfinished business? Four, three, two, one. Let's all get back to our lives. I'm going to go and try to chase down some dinner. So see you all in a few weeks. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And I hope everyone stays safe and healthy.
Thank you,
Likewise.
everyone.
Thanks,
Night.
everybody.
Thank you all.